Today I want to talk about a bit of a contentious topic, if we're going to call it that. The topic of floodgates. Yes, floodgates, the infamous, hated concept of card design that is present in some games. If you've played Yu-Gi-Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Cards like these that stop you from playing the game. This, for example, says that any card sent to the grave is banished. This one is only limited to monsters. Any monsters sent to grave are banished. This one says you must set spells before you play them, and you must wait a turn. And against some decks, these are literally one-button kills. And while I don't think we've reached that point in Grand Archive, and I don't think we will, I'm just curious. Let's call it curiosity. Because obviously, these cards, you have to draw them. You know, they are sometimes searchable. There is a certain card that can search them. There are a few cards that can search things like this, but it's very rare in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whereas these cards are always in your Regalia deck, in your material deck, which means that that's the equivalent of having floodgates in your extra deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! For example. So, seeing these in Grand Archive, and we're getting more of them. Like, for example, we recently got in PTM this card that says you cannot recover. Your opponent cannot recover. So against 3 visit decks like Arsana, Rai, and now with the Spectre Alice deck that's upcoming, this is not an auto win, but it's really powerful, you know? I mean, yes, you can kill it, but you'll have to waste something like Reduce to Ash on this, a Fracturize, which sometimes can really hinder you. So, like, for example, to be honest, I prefer cards like this, like Tariff Ring, like Safeguard Amulet, because they are one-time use, and you have to play them well, and you have to know how to play around them as well, whether you're the opponent or the player, which is a rather skillful thing. Whereas these cards, you just drop them and you say, oh, your floating memory is nullified, your imbuing is useless. But though this is a bit different, maybe I would classify this on this level. I would classify this here, for example. But cards like this, for example, this card against Genbu, for example, is really tough. You can't Fracturize this. You have to drop the Mustang, Unbroken Mustang, which is a 4 cost, to kill this. That's practically saying I pass my turn. Unless you have a high influence, you can maybe hold a primordial ritual, for example. But yeah, and there's always a cheeky interaction of your opponent playing this in a water deck. Then when they play this, they Fracturize it, and you can literally do nothing about it. Unless you play Expel the Departed and you're lucky and you draw it. Recently, Dan from Main Deck spoke about this actually in one of his videos about the issue of Floodgate, and I think he has a nice point. Where, for example, you're playing against Censor and you need floating memory, you just don't use floating memory, simple as that. You change your game plan, you adapt your game plan, and play it in a different manner. Which I agree, this has not stopped Crux from being the best deck in the format, or top 3 at least. You have Merlin, you have Lorraine, now we're going to a new format, but this has existed. Razorgate plays this, Tristan can play this, yet Crux is still dominating. They can out it obviously, but if they don't out it, they can still play. They just have to adapt. So I think when it comes to skillful play at the highest levels, this is debatably fine. But I'm just curious to see where we will go with the floodgates. Are we going to continue printing things like this? I don't know. I hope not, because I don't think just a card you drop and says you can't do a certain thing, it cancels out a certain mechanic is necessarily fine, because again, it kind of harkens back to Yu-Gi-Oh! But these, for example, are more balanced. They're more strategic, more skillful to use. Whereas these are just like, oh, I drop it and you can't play a certain mechanic, for example. You drop this against Diana, for example. Unless they have the Fracturize, it's really tough to get rid of this. Or again, they have to play the Mustang, pay 4 just to out this, which puts them behind. If they're playing Water Diana, which is like, stays at level 1. So it's just a thing that's been on my mind for a bit. I've been discussing it with other players in the community, and we've not really come to a consensus regarding what should be done with this. But I just wanted to point it out. Let's see how things will go from here on, and let's see how this card, for example, in this meta is going to shape up against something like Alice, which is Spectre Alice, which supposedly is going to be a good deck. So let's see.